Global chip manufacturing just shifted dramatically. UMC, Taiwan's second-largest semiconductor producer, started mass production in Singapore, and the implications could transform the entire technology supply chain. Now, if you've never heard of UMC, you're in good company. But here's what matters. Every smartphone chip, laptop processor, and AI server component you use comes from companies like this one. UMC stands for United Microelectronics Corporation, and they are one of the world's most important semiconductor manufacturers. Almost nobody's heard of them, which is kind of the point. Here's the thing about chips. They are so critical that the entire global economy depends on them. And for the last few decades, one tiny island in Asia has controlled roughly 65% of the world's advanced semiconductor production. That island is Taiwan. When you boot up your phone in New York, run AI software in London, or stream video in Sydney, the chips powering all of that were likely made in Taiwan. But Taiwan also faces real geopolitical pressure. China has territorial claims, typhoons happen, supply chains can rupture. So UMC just made a bold move to reduce that risk. They're not leaving Taiwan, they're building a backup. By starting production in Singapore, they're hedging against concentration. And this decision is triggering a fundamental rethink across the entire chip industry about where semiconductors actually get made. Here's why you should care. To understand why this matters, we need to talk about Taiwan's incredible hold on global chip production. It's not even close. Taiwan manufactures more advanced semiconductors than every other country on Earth combined. When a company needs a cutting-edge processor, an advanced memory chip, or a specialized semiconductor, they go to Taiwan. Full stop. TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, is literally the world's largest foundry. They make chips for Apple, Qualcomm, Nvidia, AMD, everyone. MediaTek designs the chips that power billions of smartphones across Asia. And then there's UMC, the second-largest chipmaker. All three are in Taiwan. All three are critical to global technology. The numbers are staggering. Taiwan produces chips that power artificial intelligence systems, advanced military equipment, next-generation smartphones, and cloud computing servers. If Taiwan's chip production stopped tomorrow, the global economy would seize up within weeks. No exaggeration. Supply chains would collapse, device prices would skyrocket, shortages would ripple through every industry that depends on semiconductors. Here's the scary part. Taiwan knows this. Other countries know this. China knows this. The island faces unprecedented geopolitical pressure. There's also the risk of natural disasters, typhoons, earthquakes that could disrupt production. During the COVID-19 pandemic, a single chip shortage disrupted global automotive production for months. Now imagine a crisis that completely cuts off Taiwan's output. That's why companies like UMC are now looking elsewhere. So who exactly is UMC, and why does their Singapore move matter so much? UMC was founded in 1980 and has grown into one of the world's largest independent semiconductor foundries. A foundry is basically a manufacturing service. Companies design chips, and UMC manufactures them at massive scale. UMC doesn't make chips for consumers directly. Instead, they're a backbone supplier. They manufacture specialized chips for artificial intelligence applications, industrial equipment, automotive systems, and telecommunications infrastructure. They produce what's called mature node semiconductors. These are chips that don't need the most cutting-edge technology, but they're absolutely critical to making modern systems function. Think about it this way. Advanced AI chips get all the headlines, but the semiconductor ecosystem needs both innovation and stability. UMC provides stability. They make the reliable, proven chips that power everyday technology. A smartphone might use one of their chips for power management. Your car uses UMC chips for sensors and control systems. Industrial robots depend on their semiconductors. UMC's decision to move production to Singapore is massive because it signals that even the most stable, reliable semiconductor production is no longer safe concentrating in one location. If UMC thinks geopolitical risk is high enough to justify building a new factory in Southeast Asia, then Taiwan's concentration problem is getting real. The Singapore facility won't replace Taiwan's production. Instead, it creates redundancy. It's insurance against disruption. And that's exactly what the global tech supply chain desperately needs. So why Singapore? Why not some other country? The answer comes down to infrastructure, geography, and politics. Singapore has spent decades building itself into a global technology hub. It's got world-class infrastructure, reliable electricity, advanced telecommunications, and a highly educated workforce. The government actively courts semiconductor companies. ASML, the Dutch company that makes the machines chip factories use, already has a major presence in Singapore. So do Applied Micro Circuits Corporation and dozens of other chip and semiconductor-adjacent companies. Singapore offers zero geopolitical risk from China, which is something Taiwan simply cannot guarantee. Singapore is politically neutral, stable, and internationally integrated. UMC's new Singapore facility represents a strategy that's already happening across the industry. Companies are quietly moving production away from single-point concentration. South Korea is expanding. Japan is investing heavily in new chip fabs. The United States is pouring government money into semiconductor manufacturing through the CHIPS Act. Even Europe is trying to build its own chip capacity. None of these alternatives can match Taiwan's scale or expertise immediately. That's the reality, but they don't need to. The goal is redundancy, making sure that if one link in the supply chain breaks, others can fill the gap. UMC's Singapore facility creates that redundancy. It's a calculated hedge against the geopolitical tension that's been escalating for years. This isn't the last move we'll see. More companies are going to diversify. More countries are going to build semiconductor capacity. The age of Taiwan's absolute dominance is ending. And depending on your perspective, that's either a huge relief or a significant economic change. Let's compare what Taiwan and Singapore each bring to semiconductor manufacturing. Taiwan has history, decades of accumulated expertise, a massive ecosystem of suppliers, and the world's leading chip designers and manufacturers all in one place. Taiwan has scale like nowhere else on Earth. Taiwan has problem-solving muscle. When problems arise, Taiwan knows how to solve them because it's seen and solved every chip manufacturing problem that exists. Singapore brings something different. Singapore has political stability. There's no existential threat to Singapore's independence the way there is for Taiwan. Singapore has investment capital and government support. Singapore has infrastructure that rivals anywhere on Earth. And Singapore has zero China risk, which is increasingly valuable for Western companies navigating geopolitical tensions. The trade-off is clear. Taiwan is more advanced, more experienced, and more capable. Singapore is safer and more politically neutral. The smart strategy isn't Taiwan versus Singapore. It's Taiwan and Singapore together with redundancy built in. UMC keeps its flagship advanced production in Taiwan. The Singapore facility handles mature node manufacturing that's proven technology, reliable, battle-tested, less likely to face disruptions. This is exactly how resilient supply chains work. You don't abandon your best supplier. You add backup options, you build redundancy, you ensure that if one link breaks, others can absorb the load. And that's precisely what UMC is doing. The financial analysts at Citi understand this perfectly. Financial analysts at Citi issued an improving outlook on the semiconductor sector, and UMC's Singapore move is a big part of why they are optimistic. Here's the logic. When supply chains become more resilient, markets become more stable. Stability attracts investment. Investment drives innovation and growth. And growth means the semiconductor industry keeps powering AI, cloud computing, and next-generation technology. Citi specifically pointed to supply chain diversification as a positive signal. For years, investors have been nervous about chip concentration in Taiwan. That nervousness creates uncertainty, which creates market volatility. Now that major chipmakers are publicly investing in alternative production locations, that uncertainty decreases. Investors feel safer, markets stabilize, growth accelerates. Here's another angle: political stability. If major semiconductor manufacturers are confident enough to invest billions in Singapore production, that signals reduced geopolitical risk perception. They wouldn't make that investment if they thought the situation was about to explode. They're essentially betting that current tensions won't escalate into actual disruption. And when the world's most sophisticated companies make that bet with their own capital, financial markets listen. UMC's investment also benefits Singapore's economy directly, which benefits supply chain partners in Southeast Asia, which distributes economic benefit across the region. That's exactly what stable, diversified supply chains do. They create prosperity that spreads. The Citi outlook improvement isn't just about UMC or Singapore. It's about an entire industry finally admitting that concentration risk is real and taking structural action to fix it. That's bullish for the entire semiconductor sector. So what does this actually mean for you and your devices? Let's talk timeline and impact. UMC's Singapore facility is ramping up production now, but full-scale operation will take time. We're talking 18 to 24 months before Singapore production hits meaningful volume. That means your phone purchased in 2026 is still going to contain chips predominantly from Taiwan. The diversification happens gradually, over years, not overnight. But here's what changes immediately. Pricing and availability expectations become more stable. Chipmakers can now confidently plan production without the constant fear that a geopolitical incident will cut off supply. That stability flows downstream to device manufacturers. If Apple can be confident about chip supply, they can price iPhones more predictably. If Samsung feels secure about semiconductor access, they can plan smartphone rollouts. That stability eventually reaches you through more consistent pricing and faster availability. There's also potential for better supply chain resilience during crises. If a typhoon hits Taiwan tomorrow, Singapore facilities can partially compensate. If chip demand spikes unexpectedly, multiple production locations can flex to meet it. Singapore also brings Western semiconductor production closer to Southeast Asian markets, reducing shipping costs and times for companies in that region. The geopolitical benefit is real too. Western companies increasingly need alternatives to Taiwan for security reasons. Singapore provides that alternative. It's advanced enough to handle demanding production, but politically non-controversial. That opens up opportunities for companies that were previously hesitant to rely solely on Taiwan. Most importantly, you'll see device innovation accelerate because engineers have more confidence in semiconductor supply chains. Here's what this all means for the future of global technology. We are witnessing a fundamental change in how semiconductor manufacturing works. For 30 years, Taiwan controlled the choke point. Now that choke point is getting distributed. Singapore is stepping up. The United States is investing billions through the CHIPS Act. South Korea is expanding. Europe is building capacity. This isn't bad for Taiwan. Taiwan will remain the world's most advanced semiconductor hub for years to come. TSMC will keep pushing boundaries. Taiwan's expertise won't disappear overnight, but Taiwan's monopoly power is ending, and honestly, that's probably healthy for the global economy. No single country should hold that much leverage over world technology. UMC's decision is the signal that this transition is actually happening. Not in theory, not in government policy papers, but in real capital investment by the world's most sophisticated manufacturers. When UMC puts billions into Singapore facilities, they are telling you that they believe the future of semiconductor manufacturing is distributed, resilient, and diversified. What should you watch for next? More diversification announcements, more countries investing in semiconductor capacity, more companies hedging their supply chain risks, potential Chinese investments in alternative chip production, and ongoing geopolitical developments in Taiwan, because no matter how diversified production becomes, Taiwan will remain strategically critical for years. The key takeaway: your devices are becoming less vulnerable to supply shocks. The global tech industry is building resilience. That's good news for innovation, pricing, and availability. Follow for daily updates on the technology that's reshaping the world.